Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Women Making History podcast, where we celebrate women of the past, present, and future. Today's show, we're honoring International Creativity Month by shining the spotlight on women in the creative arts. This means we'll also be sharing this episode on our Big Daily Blend and our Toast to the Arts podcast channels. We start the show with travel writer Sharon Kurtz, who talks about the women she met in Peru, especially in Machu Picchu. Then we go to artist Victoria Chick, who talks about sculptor Mary Edmonia Lewis. World champion horse trainer Christy Wood also joins us to talk about her memoir, Hoofprints Across Time, A Trail Ride to Remember. Kimberly Hess, author of the biography A Lesser Mortal, The Unexpected Life of Sarah B. Cochran, talks about Agnes Northrup, who was a designer at Tiffany specializing in floral-stained glass windows. Then we look at Elaine A. Powers, who talks about her science-based children's book. Man, she's written over 25 of them. And we close the show with our dear friend musician Joey Stuckey, who talks about Georgia vocalist Sue G. Wilkinson. So on the show, we're covering folk art. We're talking about sculptors. We're talking about writers. We're talking about glass window designers. We're talking about children's book authors and musicians, singers, songwriters. Hey, I think we've got a lot covered. The links to everybody that's on the show and related ladies that they talk about are all in the episode notes. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the podcast. Okay, so we are talking about women in the world of the creative arts. And the creative arts sometimes comes from villages. And you know what? Travel writer Sharon Kurtz is here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the creativity of the women she met in Peru. I think it was specifically in Machu Picchu, right, Sharon?
Well, actually, it's called the Peruvian Highlands. It's the Sacred Valley. But all those Peruvian women in this community we visited, their ancestors all built Machu Picchu. And they had never personally been there. Can you believe that? These native women that only live, let's just say, 5 hours away, never in their life had been to Machu Picchu. But what I learned is how creative they are. They are weavers, and they actually spin wool from the alpaca sheep into fibers. Then they dye them with native plants and leaves and stones. Then they weave them, and they weave their own garments and everything that their family needs with amazing colors.
Wow. So this is like functional art.
Yes. And it is art, because everything, they have these special patterns that are important to them, and they'll weave alpacas into their garments, and they'll weave like a sun. And so it is very artistic. It's not just functional. Everything they wear has meaning to them.
And a story.
And a story, exactly.
Yeah, it's got story. It's a form of storytelling by what they're weaving. And you've traveled the world. You've been from like Tanzania to Egypt. You've been I think Jordan too, right? All over Europe, and everywhere you go, don't you see women doing some kind of? It's almost like they're telling their story from the home as well. Like folk art sometimes gets poo-pooed, but it's really something very important in life.
It is everywhere you go in the world. Women are such an important part of the culture. And since they are in the home and they're raising children and they're taking care of the home, that's where they can do important work. And that's why weaving comes into it, but also pottery, also art.
Well, also, you just came back from Fiji, and over there you learned how to weave as well, right? So this is an interesting form, like it's using your hands, and I think it's going to have some kind of quality of time out for them. Even though it's hard work on their hands, I think it's kind of meditative to have these kinds of skills to, hey, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm working. Leave me alone.
Yes, we learned that the coconut tree is like the tree of life. So that's one thing. They weave baskets out of coconut fronds. So the coconut's important, the fibers are important, but we take these fresh fronds and they taught us how to like braid multi-level braiding, and we actually got to make baskets. And I didn't get to bring it home with me, but I used it everywhere I went from resort to resort. That's where I put all my lovely little belongings on my vanity in the bathroom.
Oh, that's awesome. So everyone, Sharon is on Big Blend Radio every first Wednesday. And for February, you can hear her on the first Wednesday of February talking about Fiji. And you can listen to that on bigblendradio.com or on youtube.com/ at Big Blend Radio. But also her experiences in Machu Picchu, that link is in the episode notes, so you can check that out. Thank you so much, Sharon, and looking forward to hearing more stories from you as you travel the world and go across the country.
Thank you. It was fun.
So artist Victoria Chick, you've probably heard her on Big Blend Radio every third Saturday with our World of Art podcast. And one of the women she's talked about before is Edmonia Lewis, actually Mary Edmonia Lewis. And she's joining us here to talk about her. But I also want to make sure you know Victoria's website is victoriachick.com. You can see her articles on blendradioandtv.com as well as nationalparktraveling.com. And she's also the spearhead behind the project of creating the Southwest Regional Museum of Art and Art Center in Silver City, New Mexico, which is where Victoria is based out of. So welcome back, Victoria. How are you?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm wonderful today, and I'm glad to be talking about Edmonia. So this is a good day for me.
Yeah, I'm excited about her too because she's done so much, and I think every time we can get a chance to talk about her, we should. So tell us a little bit about her and, where she's from and all that good stuff.
Okay. Edmonia, I consider her a great artist, and she was born in 1844. I admire her talent, of course, but I admire her just as much for her spirit. She never gave up her goal to excel in art, no matter all the adversity that she overcame. And it was a result of that. She became greatly respected, and her sculpture was admired, in the United States and Europe, even though not many people know about her today. So I want to correct that. Edmonia was never a slave. That's interesting. In 1844. She lived in some of the northern states, but actually she wasn't a slave because although her father had Negro characteristics, he was from West Indies, and he lived and I never knew that this was actually a designation. He lived as a free person of color in the United States, and her mother was a Chippewa Indian. And her father was an artist. So she had a very interesting background. And unfortunately, she was orphaned when she was only 5 years old. But she was lucky because she went to live with her aunt in Niagara Falls. And her aunt made sure she got a very good education. And a lot of her education was financed and supported mostly by her older half-brother, who had done very well in business. And so at that time, she was able to attend Oberlin College in Ohio. Now, that's an amazing thing for anybody, woman, to be able to go to college at that time in history. But being black and a woman, it was really unheard of in like the mid-18th century, which was what we're talking about. So But Oberlin, I got to tell you a little bit. Oberlin was founded on coeducation, abolitionism, and integration. So it sounds like what we call a very liberal place. However, I don't think it extended to everybody there or everybody around the college. She was attacked almost by the time when she started going there. She was attacked physically by other students. She was falsely accused of theft. She was, I can't imagine, the first semester at college is bad enough anywhere for any of us, but she was accused of poisoning a classmate. And she was found not guilty. I mean, she had to go through a trial and everything. She was found not guilty, but she was kidnapped by townspeople. She was beaten and left for dead in a field outside the college.
Wow.
Despite that, she came back to Oberlin, where she was accused of stealing art supplies. I mean, it was. Wow. I can't imagine how awful this was for her. But her brother came to the rescue. He financed her study in Boston. So she went there. She studied the work of another sculptor. So she was sort of a student of his and sort of an apprentice. But she began finishing excellent work. And during this time, she also made medallions that had relief portrait images of famous abolitionists on them. And so she made enough money selling these that she could afford a trip to Europe in 1865. I think that's amazing. When you put in the time frame, 1865. I mean, the Civil War had just ended, and she's taking an overseas trip because she's worked hard and she has talent.
Amazing.
So anyway, she found herself in Rome, and she was able to study ancient Roman and Greek statues. So that inspiration led her to work even larger. Her studio in Rome became famous. Even Americans went to see her in Europe to have her carve their portraits in stone. So she was well known for portraiture and for doing things that people wanted. She was a commissioned artist, so she didn't have to speculate on making a statue and hoping somebody would like it. But one of her most well-known works was a grouping of figures called The Death of Cleopatra. And in 1876, 100 years after the founding of the country, she had this 3,000-pound sculpture shipped to Philadelphia so that it could be considered to be shown in the Centennial exhibition there.
Wow.
It wound up being accepted because it was so outstanding. It was given a prominent place in the Hall of American Artists, and that was probably the high point of her, to her, probably, I'm guessing, of her career. Because soon after that, she went back to her studio, of course, in Rome. But there's not much written about her after that period of time. Yeah. One biographer found a record that she had died in 1907 in London. But I think this is kind of ironic. What we do know about her after this, we do know that in 2022, she was awarded a posthumous diploma in the ladies' course at Oberlin College.
Oh my gosh!
I know. I can't even say anything after that because it's so obvious. But anyway, I want to let everybody know about her. She was a wonderful artist, and she overcame trials that would stop most of us. And fortunately, I mean, she had some good things going on in her life too, because she had good parents who unfortunately died early. She had a wonderful brother who took care of her financially, and so she made it to her goal, which was to produce really great art.
It's amazing. And then, like you're saying, even travel back then to go to Rome was
Yes.
not an easy thing. You're not
Yeah.
just getting on a flight and drinking champagne,
No.
and
No.
going back and forth and shipping sculptures around. That was not,
Yeah. Building crates, shipping crates. I mean, I think consider that the time she did that, I don't even know they didn't even, I don't believe they were using steamships then. They may have just started using steamships. But let's face it, travel is not easy. And anyway, she overcame everything that she needed to overcome in her life.
Wow. Amazing. Really interesting. So glad we get to talk about her again. And everyone, I'll put a link also because there's a lot online, Wikipedia and things like that. But Edmonia Lewis, look her up. She really is. Her work is incredible. So it's really fantastic to revisit her. And like we said, we'll do it every chance we get. So thank you so much, Victoria. And everyone keep up with Victoria at victoriachick.com. And also, if you're going to Silver City, New Mexico, go enjoy the galleries downtown, but also get involved with the museum too, if you're interested in art. And it's not all about art of the Southwest. It's about having a fine art museum that they're working on creating in the Southwest region of New Mexico. So you can go to southwest-art-museum.org to learn more about that. Thank you so much, Victoria. Looking forward to our next podcast for February.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Love to talk about authors, and obviously authors are creative, whether or not they're in fiction or nonfiction. Nonfiction, you have to be creative too, because it can't be boring if you're going to learn something, right? So we've got Christy Wood back on here. Christy is a world champion horse trainer, and she is also the podcast host of ABC's of Horses here on Big Blend Radio, and she's an author of 3 books, and one is for kids, but also for adults. It's called Ranger, the Little Horse with a Big Heart. That's written from Ranger, the horse's perspective. Your Best Horse Show, a guide for managers and exhibitors. That gets into that nonfiction side. And speaking of nonfiction, her latest book is Hoofprints Across Time, a trail ride to remember. And Nancy just finished this book and has been raving and raving and raving. She goes, my gosh, Christy can really, really write. I think she finished it in a day and didn't get any work done. So thanks so much for that, Christy. Welcome back. How are you?
Thank you for having me back. I'm doing just fine.
Yeah, I love this because, you do so much in horsemanship. Can we say horsewomanship? In regards to judging, training, doing trail rides, and then also doing like epic trail rides, which is like what you do with the Chief Joseph Trail Ride, which is a 13-year progressive trail ride where you go out for 10 days in the wilderness and, follow the footsteps of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce when they were trying to escape the cavalry, the U.S. cavalry. So, that is a memoir, but at the same time, storytelling, as you're a teacher, as a trainer, right? When you train and work with people and work with their horses. So storytelling, that creative process. Do you think that helps in the training aspect of what you do?
Certainly. Well, you have to put everything into words. That was the most difficult thing I had to learn in deciding to be a horse trainer, is not just only feeling it and communicating with the horse, was to be able to put what I was feeling into words to train the rider as well.
Mm. And the books are another form of teaching, right? So, but then sharing stories like Ranger. So did you ever think that you were going to write books, when you were a kid?
No, not write books, but I did get an A in creative writing in high school. So that might have been an indication that maybe there was something on the horizon for me. Now, let me just say this, Lisa. Yes, teaching's one thing, but and also an aspect of teaching is actually sharing your passion. So luckily, and hopefully everybody that is a teacher is teaching because we are sharing a passion of a talent that we have, that we can share with others. And that's why I wrote the book, Hoofprints Across Time. is really just putting into words what I was feeling on the trail and riding through history and meeting the people and seeing the land and experiencing Mother Earth and what she had to give us, even in the present, and actually revealing the past to me as well.
And also, not so many people are able to do what you're doing. I mean, it's a select few people are able to go on this epic trail ride that takes 13 years and then do all 13 years and then go at it again like you're doing. And so I think that's really fantastic that you're able to, and some people don't ride horses, even though you can get on the trail and do different things, right? And this trail, you can do a lot. If you can even drive to parts of it. It's national forest and there's museums and all kinds of things. But, I'm looking right now as we record and it's snowing here in Georgia. And I'm thinking about how they had to ride through this kind of thing,
Yes.
because up in that area in the Northwest and the West, even in June, you could have a blizzard. And so I always think about with what you do with the Native American history and culture. You've been sharing that even in the Rose Bowl parade, right? The Rose
Yes.
Parade, you've done that.
Yes, we have.
So, on the trail, you've done so much immersion in regards to the Nez Perce themselves, the tribe. And it's also been something significant for them, right? And through that, are you also meeting women in the tribe that have creativity in what they do in regards to their attire, the jewelry, the dancing, the music, the drumming, the pottery even? Have you had that experience on the trail ride?
In some respects, yes. It's a ride of healing, first of all, for the Nez Perce, because we do have descendants of Chief Joseph that ride with us. So it's a ride of healing for them in honoring their forefathers and what they did to really try to achieve the survival of the Nez Perce tribe and, of course, the Appaloosa horse. And yes, we do touch on many aspects of their culture, which is wonderful. There are some very strong women. But the most important thing is truly the oral history that they share with us. And that's so unique to Native American tribes that didn't have, iPhones and iPads and even before the telegraph came. It was just being able to orally talk about your history. And that is how we've been able to make accountable what truly happened to the Native Americans, because a lot of it, of course, wasn't written down in books, like the Army soldiers were doing as they chased the Nez Perce. And so the oral history is so important, and they're sharing their culture with us, and it's just a wonderful experience. And again, we're this history, the ride is to honor the Nez Perce, the Appaloosa horse, but it's also to keep history alive. That's why I wrote the book, was to continue to let people know what happened in the past, and hopefully prevent some of the mishaps that we had along the way, but to share history and to keep history alive, because we learn so much from history and it should be known. You should know your history. You should go back in time and truly know where your parents came from and their grandparents and how they all were really pioneers, whether that's a label we put on the Western people or Native Americans. Our past is, we're blessed to have our future because of our past.
I love that. It's really true. And I think, you're telling the story of the Nez Perce, and it helps people to connect to individual humans as well through these stories, and it's so one thing when you look in a history book and flip through a timeline, but when you can actually get to a place like where you travel through on horseback as they did, you're giving people the actual feeling of it all.
Well, that's the idea. I wrote the book because one of your statements earlier was not everybody's going to be able to ride a horse and experience this trail. And that's another reason I wrote this, was truly, if you sit down in your chair and read my book, I'm going to make you saddle sore, because I'm going to take you along those 1,300 miles through every crevice and every mountaintop and tree limb that slaps you in the face, and you're going to feel it all. And the experience, also sharing that with my horse and the people and the land.
Well, it's so funny because as I'm watching all this snow, I'm thinking, because I think about, when this time last year we talked and Nancy and I were up in Joseph, Oregon, where he is laid to rest, Chief Joseph. And it was, we went through avalanche warnings, snowstorms, blizzards, and I'm looking out going, here we are talking about Chief Joe again in the snow. I think every time I look at snow, I think of him, and I think
Yes.
about the tribes that go through it and
Yes.
how they've lasted and that resiliency. And I think,
Oh, yes.
his spirit, with the book, do you want people to have that feeling of, I think he was a man of integrity. Did you feel that, like, what do you want people to take away from his spirit?
Well,
as a leader?
just that he was a very peaceful Indian chief. He actually wanted to live in harmony with the whites and the white people and the settlers. And the American government at the time said, no, we need to settle the land, and we can't do that with all of you here. So he was a very peaceful man, and he had a vision, and he had commitment to his people. He had commitment to the land, which was very hard for him to leave and make this exodus, basically, to elude the cavalry and to leave his father's bones where they were buried. That's very hard for families to do that. And then his pride Appaloosa horses. He really had a commitment to that and a loyalty to these horses and to his tribe. And he was just an amazing man.
Everyone, again, that's Christy Wood, author of Prince Across Time, A Trail Ride to Remember. Again, she's also written Your Best Horse Show, a guide for managers and exhibitors, but also Ranger, the little horse with a big heart. And I love that because you tell the story from Ranger, right? From Ranger's perspective, which is also unique and creative. So everyone, you can go to wdnhorse.com. And also Christy is up on Amazon, where I know a lot of you buy books. So check it out there. But go to her website, wdnhorse.com. You can also listen to her ABCs of Horses podcast with us there as well. Thank you so much, Christy.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
We are continuing our conversation about women in the arts, and we've got Kimberly Hess here, and she is the author of A Lesser Mortal, The Unexpected Life of Sarah B. Cochran. And this is an amazing biography to read about Sarah, who is known as the Coal Queen. So you can get it on Amazon, all those great places, but you can also keep up with Kimberly. Go to Unexpected Life of Sarah B. Cochran.com. And the link is in the episode notes, so you can just click right through easily. So welcome back, Kimberly. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. Thanks for having me today.
Hey, excited. It's cold out, but I believe we're going to talk about something that's got a bit of light to it, right?
Yes.
Light and color.
That's right. So when I was researching the biography that I wrote of Sarah Cochran, one of the unexpected people who I came across was a woman by the name of Agnes Northrop. Agnes was a designer for Louis Comfort Tiffany in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And I had never really had any reason to think about her before that, because anytime I would see the Tiffany window that was at Sarah Cochran's home, Linden Hall, it was just referred to as a Tiffany window, and not having any background in decorative arts or Tiffany specifically, I didn't really think any more deeply about it than that. But it turns out that Agnes Northrop happened to be the designer at Tiffany who worked with Sarah Cochran to design this window. And the window depicts the Linden Hall Gardens in full bloom. So it's quite a large window, very colorful, and interesting to see if you've been to the Linden Hall property as well. So,
And everyone, that's in Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
For people they want to go see it?
About an hour south of Pittsburgh. So if anyone visits Fort Necessity or Falling Water, it's in that general vicinity. Linden Hall, the mansion, is in that vicinity. The window went to a private collector about 20 or so years ago. And then the Metropolitan Museum of Art acquired it about a year ago and just unveiled it in the American wing in November. And I was able to attend that unveiling, and the window is just spectacular. And it looks beautiful on Instagram too. So for anyone who isn't able to visit the museum, but can take a look on Instagram, the Met has some beautiful images of it, and so does the Neustadt Museum.
I think you put some up on your Instagram, right?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and tell everybody what your Instagram handle is so they can follow you there, because that's where, when you said who you're going to talk about, I'm like, I know, and I'm going, I bet you posted this. I love
Yes.
following your posts.
Thank
So yeah,
you.
tell people where they can follow you.
So my Instagram is Kimberly Hess wrote that. And there
Mm.
are some pictures of the unveiling on my Instagram. Yeah.
This is fascinating to me, because when you think of what Agnes did, and Agnes Northrop, the Northrop name is really, there's some history behind that too. That's a whole other story.
Mhm.
But when we look at Tiffany, it's not where you're, that area of Pennsylvania is not far from Corning in upstate New York.
Mhm.
And Corning also, I mean, that was part of, because they did glass. I mean, even the glass for when we had our first light bulbs, and even they came up with the formula for how we have glass on our cell phones, the Gorilla Glass, I think it's what they call.
Mm.
And so when I think about that, like, it wasn't so far away. So when you start to look at the history of these, different women in the arts, I'm like, I wonder if she went to Corning, and because they have Tiffany Glass, and had a relationship with Tiffany.
Mm.
So I wonder, I just always try to connect the dots.
Yeah, I
You,
don't know that much about her travels as
mm,
far as Corning goes. I know that she was born in Queens in 1857, and she
mm.
lived until 1953. And at the 1900 Exposition Universelle in Paris, she exhibited a magnolia window, and I believe that
Oh,
was what won her the Diploma of Merit. So it's very impressive to me that Sarah Cochran was working with this designer who had already been celebrated at the Exposition Universelle.
I also want to give a shout out to Sarah B. Cochran too, because, the window, and then there was the pipe organ. We talk about the arts.
Right.
So she was, she was an amazing woman who was, her philanthropy and all the work she did for people and women. So I think we've got to give her a shout out, can't we? Because
I think
you,
so.
she's helped women in the arts.
Yes, and even women in opera as well, because when she held her suffrage rally at Linden Hall, she had women singing arias from various operas. And some of those women were singers who had been performing in Europe, but had to come back because the theaters closed during World War I, and this was 1915. I know that she was related to at least one of those singers, but she seemed to really enjoy music and try to promote it as much as she could.
Mm, very cool. I love this. I love hearing these stories about women that you just don't hear about all the time,
Yeah.
like Agnes, Sarah B. Cochran. And in your research and writing, A Lesser Mortal, you've got to have come across so many women that, you want to spotlight as well.
Right. Yeah, I have since learned about a suffragist who attended Sarah's rally. Her name was Elizabeth McShane Hillis. And she was involved with the Justice Bell and then attended Sarah's rally and
Hmm.
then went on to become a silent sentinel for Alice Paul. So that was someone I had never really heard of, even through connections in Western Pennsylvania. And Ida Tarbell was another person whose name came up in the course of the research. As possibly, interacting through Allegheny College, but I haven't found any evidence of correspondence or interaction. So there are several women whose names have come up. Anna Howard Shaw is another one, but also men have come up too. In some cases, men that we've already heard of, and in other cases, men that we haven't heard of so much before.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for shining some light on Agnes and Sarah today. Everyone, again, links are in the episode notes for everyone, and you can keep up with Kimberly at unexpectedlifeofsarahbcochran.com. A Lesser Mortal is available on Amazon. So I highly encourage getting it and just reading about this amazing woman. And she really was the queen of coal, and she did a lot of good for a lot of women, especially in the education department of things too. So a great read. We're at the end of January, going into February, and right around the corner is Women's History Month. So, just saying, a little nudge, nudge. So thank you so much, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
So as we celebrate women in the arts, this is all about International Creativity Month for January, but we think every day should be Creativity Day. But we're really focusing on women in the creative arts world. And we love Elaine A. Powers. She is a retired biologist. She's a conservationist, and she's into acting, singing, and also has written a number of science-based children's stories and even scripts. I think it's over 25. But she uses her creativity to educate and uses storytelling to educate kids about reptiles and plants and all kinds of good things about our natural world. So, welcome back to the show, Elaine. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Well, I want to know, did you ever think that creativity would be like part of your life, going from, a biologist and conservation standpoint, that creativity would be, a focus of your world in storytelling to help kids and their parents, because it extends out.
Well, I knew, creativity has always been a major part of my life. As a matter of fact, I was a singer as a child and young adult. And at one point I thought maybe I wanted to make my living singing, either opera or musical theater. And so I actually have a bachelor's in music in voice performance that goes along with getting my bachelor's in science biology at the same time, which was at Florida State University. So the creativity and performing arts have always been important in my life. I realized I could make a living as a biologist and enjoy it, and probably wouldn't do as well as a singer. So I kept the singing and directing and performing for my enjoyment. And along the way, I realized I could provide opportunity for children. So I was writing some little theater scripts so that I could have kids in the summer program all participate in their library performance programs. So I've always wanted to include kids and give them performing opportunities. But then, life often takes sharp turns. And when I moved to Tucson, my mother came to live with me. And since I needed to be at home to care for her, I started writing more seriously. And so I changed from writing theater scripts into writing rhyming picture books and using that as a creative outlet for my creativity that I had formerly got on stage.
And I think the rhyming is such an important part, right? Because
I think it is.
It actually helps them formulate sentences and to read out loud, right? Because it gives them a pattern to follow, and it makes, them, pronounce the words better even.
Yes. And it's got a lyric rhythmic quality that sticks in your brain. And it helps kids develop their language skills. So I'm personally in the camp of picture books must rhyme.
I think it's fun. I mean, and that's kind of like nature, when you listen to birds, they have a specific song and a specific rhythm. Do you ever listen to nature to be inspired by the music of nature for what you're doing in books?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a reason why song lyrics usually rhyme. It helps you remember them, and it goes with the flow of the song and the music. And there's a lot of musicality in the world around us as well, out there in
Mm,
nature.
absolutely. I don't know. I think mockingbirds follow us across the country. Everywhere we go, I get a mockingbird outside my window. It's my thing. I love mockingbirds.
I,
They're my buddies.
I do too, except for one that was outside my dorm room at Florida State who would sing all night long.
Really? At
Yes,
night?
at
Oh,
night. And
repented love. Mm.
he was not beloved by me because he would keep me up all night with his singing.
Oh, well, maybe, I don't know. They're interesting because they do mimic other animals and sounds and other birds, phone, like even crows. I mean, I love birds that can mimic, it's fascinating how they can do that. But that's part of it, is with kids reading your books and then also seeing the pictures, it makes it really fun. What was your first book that you went, okay, I'm doing this, and you published it and then you said, okay, now I'm going to do another one? Or did you like have to think twice about doing another one because it's over 25 books now, right?
Yes, and actually I started out to write murder mysteries. But I was on a research vessel in the Bahamas and I ran across a curly-tailed lizard. And for some reason, mentally, he told me that his name was Curtis. And so I wrote this story about Curtis Curlytail, and I went back on board the ship and I typed it out as fast as I could because I knew if I didn't get it out, I would never finish it. Well, then everybody who had seen me typing furiously said, oh, well, I have to read it. And they all said, you should publish this. So I got a friend to do the illustrations and I published it. And it was going to be a one and done because, after all, I had murder mysteries to write. Well, the kids who read it all came back and said, when is the next Curtis Curlytail coming out? And so,
Ooh.
along with that, the Bahamas National Trust realized that this was a way to educate kids on environmental issues, is using adventure tales. So I've got 4 in that series. But then I lived in Tucson, so I was thinking, I need some books that I can sell here in Tucson. And
Mm.
that's where the rhyming picture book started. And
Wow.
they've just kind of taken off. I'm always being having topics suggested to me. So I have 6 I'm working on right now.
Oh my gosh. Because, when you go on your site and everyone, you could go to ElaineAPowers.com. The link is in the episode notes. You're going to see she's got theater scripts. She's got all kinds. She's got the Curly Tail Lizard series. She's got a series for, the Sonoran Desert. There's conservation books. Lime Lizard Lads. Okay. The
Those are the
Lime Lizard.
that's the Curtis Tale series set in the Cayman Islands.
Wow.
Because they were jealous that the Bahamas were getting all those books. So they needed to
Okay.
have their own.
And so what is the latest one you got into dinosaurs?
Yes. Many people ask me for books on dinosaurs, and that's a huge topic. So I decided I would write them about the dinosaurs that have been found here in Arizona. And it's just fascinating. Not only the variety of dinosaurs they found, but how much the scientists can describe about the dinosaurs' lives just by looking at a few bones and some footprints.
Amazing. And we're always finding new things, like we always thought the hummingbirds were more from South America. And I think we've talked about this on a show with you before, but then one of the earliest fossils that were recently found in the last 5 to 10 years was from Germany, for a hummingbird, which I know about hummingbirds because you've written about one too, so it's kind of like, isn't this always changing? Do you have to kind of put that as part of, it's whatever is concrete now in science is always going to shift, and I think that's
Absolutely.
something we have to get people to understand that part because otherwise people go, well, they just told us this. And now scientists are lying. No, they're not. They're just saying, hey, we found more evidence. And now here's an updated it's like one big update that you have to keep doing, right? It's like our computers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. You do need some creativity to have some fun and some nature time. Well, tell us about the Hummingbird book, the Hummingbird of El Conquistador. Oh,
Well, some of you who have been to Oro Valley may be familiar with the El Conquistador Resort, and it's actually just up the road from me. And they've always been a big supporter of my books. And the manager of the gift shop said, would you write a book about a female hummingbird that came back year after year and built a nest outside the gift shop window? So I said, sure. So I researched and got their stories. And I believe I've correctly identified the species of hummingbird that it was. But even this poor little hummingbird went through such traumatic experiences living outside this gift shop. It got caught in monsoon storm. She had her favorite branch that she would keep rebuilding her nest on. And then the gardener came and trimmed it one year. And so she had to find a whole nother branch to build her nest on. And nest location is very important for a hummingbird. There are other animals that eat hummingbirds.
Snakes.
But I think it turned out quite well. And I was fortunate to have a local poet who was willing to translate it. So I have not only an English-only version, I also have a Spanish-English bilingual version.
Fantastic. I see that also for your vampire tortoise
Yes.
story. A vampire tortoise? Only you, Elaine. We'll do this. A vampire tortoise? Come on now.
Well, disclaimer, there are no vampires in this book. But don't
What
tell
about
anyone.
bats? Well, come on. People think that about the bats, and isn't that why people are scared of bats? Because they think they're going to go and attach to their necks. But in the Sonoran Desert, the fruit bats are fruit bats. So they may have red going down their face from fruit or no. Like, okay, you gotta,
That's how the tortoise is mistaken. She's actually eating prickly pear fruit.
okay. So that's where the blood-like substance, right?
Yes.
So then you think it's a vampire, but people have a massive fear on bats.
Oh, yeah. And we have no vampire bats in the Sonoran Desert.
But bats are pretty cool. I mean,
Oh,
I've had one
absolutely.
land on me while I was in bed once, and I'm not going to lie, that was freaky. That was a kid, but we got it out, and we've had bats stuck in tents, when we were in Kenya, the bats would get in your tent. Because if you look at a tent, it's like a little cave. It's a great place for them to go hang up at the top. You
Well,
get in
sure.
there with your little lantern, you look up, you're in bed, and you're like, look up before you turn your lantern off. You're like, oh, there's a bat above me, But in the Sonoran Desert, you've got the nectar, the ones that have the nectar, the fruit. They're big. Like those are some giant bats that come out.
The fruit bats, especially in the southern part of the world, are the flying foxes are huge. They've got 3-4 foot wingspans. Most of the bats here in the Sonoran Desert are much smaller. They may have up to a foot wingspan, but we do have 21 species of bats here in the Tucson area.
Wow. And so being a dark sky community helps, right?
It does. And I took part of a study. They were wondering how bats utilize pools in desert environments. So I had a recording device set out on my diving board, and I actually have 18 different species of bats visit my backyard in a given
wow.
year, which just blew my mind.
That's amazing to think that many species. When we lived outside Joshua Tree National Park, we'd get in our pool and we would get in at a specific time because it was like, that was the bat hour. And they would come and dip down, and we didn't do chlorine. I think we had like a salt water, try to be as natural as possible. So I don't know but they would just, I don't know, were they drinking water? I don't know. They would dip down.
The insects just above the water.
Yeah, that's what because we did have insects, and yes, we did. But but it was so cool to be around them, and we weren't scared. And people are like, "You guys are nuts." We're like, Nancy and I were like, "No, this is the coolest thing ever." And they kind of knew, like they knew who we were and we knew who they were, but we didn't really know who they are. They just kind of said, okay, yeah, they're here doing their human thing. Look at them. Look at those big things getting in a pool of water, So, but it's how cool to tap into creativity to spread, because now I'll end up on a 20-minute phone call with you about bats. So I got to reel it in, but look at your creativity and what it's done. You've got to feel good about that.
I do.
Through your
And
work.
I'm glad that in my life I've had the opportunity to find different ways of expressing my creativity. And, through music and now through poetry and sharing of science.
I love it. Thank you so much, Elaine. I know you've mostly been on our shows with our Tucson Sisters in Crimes episodes. And that's where I first met her. And I just, she's like, she wrote mysteries. But she really does a lot of scientific and conservation work, which we love and appreciate. We appreciate it all. And we've always had some very interesting conversations. So it's always fun to have you on the shows and also to represent the Tucson Sisters in Crime, talk about women in the arts. We should really give a shout out to these ladies, and there's gentlemen involved as well.
Oh,
but
yes.
I think it's fantastic about women writing crime, because a lot of times it feels like it's going to be a very male oriented kind of thing. But look at how many women historically have written crime. We're pretty good at even committing them.
Oh, yes.
So
we're much more creative.
Yeah. So everyone, TucsonSistersInCrime.org is a website to go to. And the Festival of Books, you want to tell everybody when that is? When does that happen? Because that's when people can actually meet a lot of the Tucson sisters and get familiar with their books.
It's the second weekend in March.
Okay.
Cool. And it's held in the mall of the University of Arizona. It's the third largest book festival in the country, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
For little old Tucson. But it's going to be I believe it's the 15th and 16th.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool.
And come out and see me in my booth and see the Tucson Sisters in Crime in their booth.
And everyone, again, so if you go
books.
to TucsonSistersInCrime.org, keep up with them there, because you'll also be able to connect to a lot of women who are writing and keep up with them and find about new women that you may have not read, how they're killing off their husbands or other people. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on, but there's a lot of women who write about killing off their husbands. I've noticed this. But it's pretty fun. That's pretty fun.
And even in my mystery short story, I include science. So, it's applicable in many genres.
I see. That is. Well, thank you so much. Always fun, Elaine. Everyone, ElaineAPowers.com. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
All right. So in honoring women in the arts, the creative arts, well, all the arts are creative, right? We have Joey Stuckey here on Big Blend Radio. He is the co-host of the Big Daily Blend show every fourth Sunday. He's an award-winning blind guitarist, songwriter, singer, composer, producer, radio and TV personality. He is a big personality, isn't he, Nancy?
Yes, he is.
And he's a music columnist, an educator, and sound engineer. And he is the official ambassador of music for Macon, Georgia. And we all know Macon, Georgia is known for its musical roots. So welcome back, Joey, and excited to hear who you have nominated to talk about in regards to the women in the arts today.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people that I could pick, but the person that I have chosen that has inspired me the most directly, and I feel honored to call them a colleague and a friend, is Sue Wilkinson. And she also goes by the name of Sue Lou. She has a couple of different musical projects. And I first became a fan of hers in the early 90s when I was just getting into the recording business, and I was up at my upstairs attic, which I turned into a small little studio. I was just getting started and didn't really know what I was doing, to tell you the truth. And I used to listen to her music being played on the local Atlanta college radio station, Album 88. And Atlanta is about an hour and 15 minutes, from where I am. And so I had to wait till the sun went down before I could get the radio signal clearly up in my little attic room. And that's the only room in the house I could hear Album 88. And her voice and her songwriting were so incredible to me. She's like she's just, I don't know how to explain the talent she has. It's just otherworldly, She can sing every kind of music: pop, jazz, R&B, soul, blues, rock.
Wow.
And just really incredible. And so then I actually got to meet her, and I was a big fan. And then I actually took some voice lessons from her and became a student. And then after all this time, we became friends. And she is still one of my dearest friends. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of, back in 2016, I wrote a song. I don't know, you remember 2016 seemed to be kind of the year of the woman. There were all these incredible things happening. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to be the first female president. And I wrote a song with one of the gentlemen from the band The Pogues. I wrote a song, and also in that co-write was a guy from a band called The Popes. And there was another co-writer of ours was a guy from the band Modern English. And we wrote a song called What You See Ain't What You Get. And it was a theme of female empowerment, about how incredible women were and how they could do anything they wanted to do. And they were just as good as men or better. And we wrote this song, and it was a great little tune. And then we're like, well, gosh, none of us need to sing it. It needs to be sung by a woman. And I called Sue and said, I've got this anthem that you need to be the one to sing. And she killed it. And it's one of my proudest moments because we collaborated on, she wasn't one of the songwriters, but she came and brought the vision to life. And just, man, let's put it this way, Janis Joplin wishes she sounded that good. It's that good. Wow. And Sue has done so many. So that was in 2016, and that's I debuted it on an album I put together of female artists that I had produced over the years called Ladies of the South. And so it was the theme song, What You See Ain't What You Get. And it was just a powerful moment for me. I just really enjoyed it. But Sue's work is incredible, and why she's not a superstar like Aretha Franklin or some of these other great singers, I don't know, because she should be. But so I am just inspired by her as a person, as an artist, as a musician, and just thrilled to get a chance to talk about her.
I love it. That's why we do this show. It's, about women making history, and women of the past, the present, the future, because, women of the past, they, hand down, they're trailblazers. They pass the torch. And, it's really just putting the women in the spotlight, because women oftentimes don't get put in the spotlight.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And she's an educator. I mean, she teaches. She's done a lot of things. She's opened up for a lot of big bands. She's done musicals, and she's done pretty much everything. And she started out. I know a lot about her because, as I say, she's become a very dear friend. And she used to sneak out of her. We grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and she used to sneak out of her home when she was 16 years old, and go sing jazz in some of the clubs and stuff like that. So she's just such an interesting person, but also kind and sweet, but as I say, talented, and she's passing on that knowledge as an educator as well. So that's another big plus that I really love, that she's passing down to her students all the knowledge and wisdom and talent that she's gained over the years.
Yeah, I love it when education becomes part of someone's legacy. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do in life is teach,
Yeah.
So everyone, Joey, you can keep up with Joey at joeystuckey.com, but he's also making sure that you can hear the music, Sue's music. So check in the episode notes. The link is right there so you can take a listen to Sue's music and enjoy her amazing voice. So thank you so much for talking about Sue from Macon, Georgia.
She's from Atlanta, but that's all right.
Atlanta. Well, come on. You know what? And we're so close. And as we record this and this airs, we're just up the road from you. We're in Peachtree City. So,
nice.
We're back in Georgia. Yeah. Georgia's got some good music, but, I think Atlanta's in your backyard, wouldn't you say?
I mean, with urban sprawl, it'll all be Atlanta one day.
Yeah. Hot Atlanta.
We'll just be South Atlanta.
Yeah, I was going to say hot Atlanta, but it has not been hot in Georgia. Let me tell you. No, you guys, we need summer back. I'm just saying. Well, thank you so much, Joey.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.